Hey, 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 Mom Nation, and welcome back to another episode of From the Heart. This is one of my favorite shows on this podcast channel, you guys, because this is where we talk to women that have risen from the ashes, that have come from something possibly tragic or something or some sort of obstacle that they have had to overcome and have made it through and are here to tell the tale. And we have one of those very, very special women with us today. Welcome, Darien. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Katie, for having me.
I have this little applause button that I got on my new equipment. Let's see if it works.
That's fun.
Sonia's going to laugh. She is my partner for our What's What Wednesday, used to be called What's What Wednesday, for our Good Morning Mom Nation show, which is live on Wednesday morning. So I like have all these sound effects that I'm going to surprise her with tomorrow. So.
Yes.
That's not why we have you here, Darien,
Yes.
even though I have really, really fun toys to play with over here. This has been a long time coming because for those of you who don't know, Darien is the co-admin for our Sober Mom Nation group, which I really appreciate that you do, all of the time, energy, and value that you bring to those ladies. I really appreciate that. It's one of our sister groups. We started it not too long ago, I think about 2 years ago or so. And I feel like it's a much needed support system for the community out there that is headed down that sober path. Maybe they're not quite there yet. Maybe they're struggling with it, or you know what, maybe they are achieving their sober days, weeks, months, and years, just like you are. So thank you so much for being there for those ladies. I know that they appreciate you just as much as I do.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of that group. So thank you.
Thanks. So that too is not why we are here. We are here, first of all, I want you to, if you don't mind, dive into your story a little bit, because you have created a wellness space for women that is absolutely phenomenal. I find it to be very, very unique and very needed. And now I've been around for a couple of decades now, Darien, and I've been talking to people for a couple of decades now, and I have found that nobody creates such an amazing, valuable space for women to thrive in unless they have a reason to do it, unless they've been through something. So this is where you come in. Where does your story start, my friend?
So just quickly, I'm the owner founder of the Zen Den of Gilbert, which is a holistic wellness and community center. So we offer lots of different offerings, but the whole reason why we began the Zen Den of Gilbert wasn't because I was trying to open a yoga studio. It was because I found a need for gathering space, so a space to gather community. So prior to the Zen Den, I was doing mobile yoga. So I was going to different locations and meeting a lot of people, and I could tell that there was just this need for people to come together. And part of my story was when I quit drinking in 2020. Obviously, it was a very isolating time. It was during COVID, and there just really wasn't any resources for me. I was not into AA. If that's your path, that's great. It just wasn't my path. It's helped a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't a space for me. I'm not a churchgoer, so going to church wasn't really a thing for me. And then I obviously wasn't going to the bars anymore. So I felt very isolated, very lonely. And I wanted a space where people could come together that were outside of those places, right? So a place where people could come together and be together in community without drinking, without any type of agenda, and being able to be there on their own terms. So a place where they felt seen and heard and understood and kind of found that middle ground. So that's basically how and where the Zen Den was born, was based off of just my journey of looking for community myself and seeing that when I was out and sharing all of the different modalities that we now offer at the Zen Den.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that personal portion of your story. And one thing that I want to do, if it's okay if we talk about the sobriety journey for just a moment, because something that I hear not only in our Sober Mom Nation group, but with other women that I have spoken to is, well, what am I going to do with my friends now? What am I going to do on the weekend now? What am I going to do when I'm invited to a party? And, I'm here, did you go through any of that? Did you have some of those same questions run through your head? And did that stop your journey at any point?
So I really didn't have a choice to quit drinking. I ended up with pancreatitis, so I didn't have a choice.
Oh, wow.
And to answer your question, I had thought about it for quite some time prior. But the reason I didn't was because of that exact challenge that you just expressed of what now? What am I going to do now? Because my whole life revolved around, like, I'd come home from work and my husband and I would hang out in the backyard and have beers, or I would go to the bar that I had worked at for years and go hang out. It was like Cheers. I'd go hang out after work and have a couple of beers. Or Saturday night, the girls are coming over for cocktails. Like, that was all that I knew. So to your point, it was very, like, I just thought it was going to be so boring, Katie. I thought life was over as I knew it. I didn't know what sober people did. And honestly, I didn't want to know at the time. I thought it was just going to be this very boring, vanilla lifestyle. And I have to say, since then, I found that I can go to a party without drinking. I can have parties without drinking. We have parties at the studio all the time where we have mocktails or just snacks, and it's just such a different dynamic to be in space with people when you're completely present, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like a lot of times when we would go to parties or have these happy hours or these things where you don't even remember what happened a lot of times, or the full experience that you had the night before. It's so much different now that you can have the full experience of remembering everything, and you get to decide, like, how did I feel about that? Was that fun? Was I really connecting with that person? Or was it just, we got hammered the night before and that's how we connected, right? So it's just so, to me, especially, I'm also on this amazing healing journey that happens when you quit drinking. It's so nice to be able to discern whether you're really connecting with somebody over a genuine experience or alcohol.
So I love that, because again, I hear it a ton, but did your fears come to fruition when you first started and you had that first party?
Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I created the fear more than it actually existed. So the fear was, is everybody going to know that I'm not drinking? Are they going to ask me why I'm not drinking? Are they going to challenge me? Right. But what I found is, like, the people that you should be spending your time with will respect the fact that you don't drink, aren't going to question you about your drinking, aren't going to assume that you're pregnant because you're not drinking. That happens, right?
Yeah.
So, I can remember the first gathering that I went to, and it was a wine night, like legit wine night. The only thing that there was to drink at this party was wine and water. So if I can give you one tip, bring your own. Like, so bring your Stanley full of whatever it is, sparkling water, a mocktail, whatever the case may be. I think what's great about Stanley's is they've normalized you kind of bringing your own beverage with you wherever you go. So to answer your question, I feel like the fear was more in me than actually existed. So I was afraid of those questions. I was afraid of how I was going to react. I was afraid of how I was going to react around the wine. But honestly, like, it was fine. And I genuinely had a really good time and had some really good conversations that, and there's a lot of firsts when you quit drinking. So that first party, that first happy hour, that first time going to the bar. So it was really great to get past that first gathering and know, A, like, I could do it. It wasn't that big of a deal. B, I wasn't triggered at all. And C, I was ready to go on to the next one. So there was some fear behind it, but it was quickly quelled just by my own, like what I felt like was my own strength. And now that I'm glad that I have these tools that I can share with others.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Do you feel like, so everybody that is listening to the show is old enough to remember 2020 and the pandemic and everything that we went through. Do you feel like that period of forced isolation caused, now I know you said you quit in 2020, so I'm not sure when in 2020 you quit, but do you feel like that forced isolation caused your drinking to excel?
Oh, 100%. Like it was just a long spring break, right? So it happened in
Yeah.
March. It was just
Right.
this long spring break. And not only that, but I was terrified. Not everybody was, but I was deeply afraid. So, I was trying to drown that, not only the fear, but then again, it was almost like I can stay up as late as I want. Granted, I was still working remotely, but I didn't have to get up and get ready and be in front of people. And so, I could start at my normal time and maybe stay up a little bit later. So yeah, I definitely think it added fuel to the fire. Not only fear, isolation, maybe feeling like you had a pass to just stay up a little bit later and go a little bit harder. So I definitely think that was probably what caused the pancreatitis, was because and again, like I wasn't like chugging bottles of Jack Daniel. I was like a beer drinker, the occasional White Claw. I didn't even really drink hard alcohol at home. So you can imagine. I honestly think it was the universe just saying it was time, like you're meant for something else, which I'm grateful for. But I definitely think that time of fear and loneliness added to the increase in the drinking, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like a lot of other people out there probably had that same experience. And I think even statistically, I don't have it right in front of me, didn't look it up, but my memory, if it serves me appropriately, I do believe that drinking soared quite remarkably during that time.
Indeed.
A lot of people were feeling that too, and I know that it caused some other issues. Now, there was something else that I think, and you tell me your thoughts on this, that came out of that time that we're still sort of dealing with, and perhaps it even started before then, but I'm thinking that it intensified during the pandemic and during that forced isolation, is this loneliness that we're seeing amongst women. Can you dig into that just a little bit? Because I know that was also something that pushed you toward the Zen Den and creating the space that you created.
Yes, 100%. So I spend a decent amount of time on social media for my business, right? Not to mention, I think it's a great way to connect. That's how you and I connected. So I'm very grateful for that. But what I've seen and what I've experienced in working with women, so we do a women's circle every other week at the Zen Den. It's on Tuesdays now. It used to be on Wednesdays. And the reason why I created the women's circles was because I found this calling of women, like, I'm looking for my bestie on social media, right? So they're looking for friends. Here's what I'm into, or are you into this? So it was almost like, Tinder on Facebook for friendships, for girlfriends. Because to your point, like during that time, I think that people who were introverted really dove deep into that, right? And that's fine. I have an introvert daughter. She wears it loud and proud that she's an introvert. But with that, I mean, there are statistics out there that share that, like, the loneliness epidemic, being alone and not having any human interaction is actually like bad for our health, right?
Yeah.
So, we need people. So as I'm seeing all of these posts of like, I'm looking for my friends, I'm looking for my people, I'm looking. And that's why women's circles were created. Because like, you need to be out in front of people. So originally it was part of Club Shine. So that was a women's group that I had created at the beginning of the Zen Den. And it was all online. And I'm like, why aren't we all getting together in person? Granted, it was a great way to connect. We were all on Zoom, right? So we were all in Zoom land. So we still could create those connections. And it's really changed the way that we communicate now. But there's nothing like that in-person connection where you're sitting in front of a woman, you're sharing something about yourself, she's sharing something about herself. But I've also experienced like the fear that comes along with that. A lot of times I'll get it was last month, I had 17 women signed up for Women's Circle. Nice. And I want to say half of them backed out. And the majority of them was because they were nervous. It was so fear-based. And I think that's something that kind of developed during COVID, like just this fear of going out and being around people and being in front of people, not to mention, you know, when you're sharing things about yourself and you're listening to other people share things about themselves, there's so much fear that comes along with that. So I think COVID definitely had a hand in that as far as creating that separation, that fear. And I think we're still recovering from that.
Certainly. And I'm going to be the less popular kid here and throw this out here. I love social media for the positivity and the positive things that it brings in terms of connection, in terms of, you know, there's a whole but in learning and experiencing knowledge, information when it's the right information, right? That's really important. So there's like this really great whole side of social media. But I think the dark side of social media is what really does hinder a lot of us as women, especially, and also adds to that social anxiety. And I'll explain. I feel like social media makes us self-conscious because I'm looking at you and your beautiful life. And Darien, you're not going to post a picture of yourself, you know, going through maybe some tragedy that happened in your life recently. Like you might post about it, but that's not going to be your daily thing, right? Like your daily thing that people are normally posting are the good things that happen, or the happy things, or, you know, maybe they just went and clean the whole entire house and it never actually looks like that, but that's the picture that they're posting, right? And so the picture that they've painted of their life is a bit false, right? Like it's just shiny and bright and pretty. And those that are observing that or following that are seeing that, and they're probably feeling a bit self-conscious, like, wow, Darien's house is always super spotless and looks great. Like I must be a crappy wife or a crappy housekeeper or a crappy mom or whatever the case may be. So it gives us sort of a false something to, what's the word that I'm looking for? It escapes me at the moment. There's a perfect word out there for it, but really like a false thing to live up to when we are comparing ourselves, which I feel like as women, we do just really naturally compare ourselves to one another. I feel like that causes a lot of social anxiety because now I'm going to go to your women's circle and I'm going to share that, you know what, I'm not as perfect as Darien is. And I know Darien's perfect because I see her on social media and all she does is post perfect pictures, right? So I feel like that kind of feeds into it too. And then there's this other dark side of social media that I've been noticing just unbelievably lately. Like it just seems like it's been so much more. And it's when I think what happened was when Facebook introduced, so I'm just talking about Facebook interaction right now. But when Facebook introduced the ability to comment anonymously in these Facebook groups, and as women, like I don't know if men have the same deal, but there's a ton of women's groups, moms groups on Facebook. Like I'm a part of a bunch of them. I'm sure you are too. But it seems to sort of be the norm to make fun of somebody, attack somebody, you know, make them feel not so smart or not so pretty or not so great behind an anonymous comment. And I think that that's really deteriorating it's making us self-conscious as women.
I would 100% agree. And then you're sitting in a circle and wondering, is that the woman who said X about my post about X, right?
Right.
Was she the one who was judging me or commented harshly or made me feel a certain way? I would totally agree. You know, especially if somebody who doesn't post a lot or doesn't put themselves out there a lot, and then that's the reaction that they get when they do. Mm-hmm. That could be very intimidating, you know, thinking that that's the room full of women that you're walking into is just like, and I think that's a lot of times what is pictured when people are walking into not even a women's circle to Zen Den, but maybe, you know, you're in a Facebook group and there's a networking event or there's a coffee meetup or you're bringing your kids to a play date. You know, you're just picturing like this lion's den and you're going to walk in and they're just going to pounce on you. And that breaks my heart Because to your point, that's what's happening on social media in some instances and in some groups, is that lion's den is just going after them. So
And it's not acceptable. But
it's not okay. It's not okay. And that's why I'm grateful to have these safe spaces where that's not going to be the experience. You're going to feel welcome. You're going to feel warm. Your cup is going to be full when you leave, not like, what did I just walk into?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a very, very real fear. And it's a very, very real feeling that if somebody has enough guts to tear me to shreds online, what are they going to do to me in person? And do I really want to put myself there? Like, I think that that's the fear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another just quick personal story is I was bullied horribly in school. I mean, terribly. And that's another reason why I created these communities, is because I literally did walk into the lion's den at school every day. Right? So that's a real legitimate fear of literally walking into school, into the lockers, or, you know, a certain hallway, and just knowing that there was going to be harassment or dirty looks, or maybe even something physical happening. Like, so to your point, when those things are happening virtually on social media, it's almost as impactful as if it's happening in person. So just knowing that, you know, these spaces are created to protect you, to make you feel safe, to make you feel seen. That's like what we talk about every circle, is like, this is a safe space. What's said here stays here. And then encouragement to continue those friendships, relationships outside, right? Like that's a big piece of it too. So to your point, it's probably really hard for people when they're seeing these things on social media and virtually, and you know, keyboard, what do they call it? Keyboard warriors. Yeah. To think that, you know, actually true, genuine friendships and relationships still exist out there.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, maybe some people haven't ever experienced that. So how would they know? Right.
Yeah, that's true. It's heartbreaking.
It very much so is. So
It
let me
really
ask you this. So when you have, so let's just say, for example, you have a gathering, you have a get together. Have you ever had an instance or a scenario or an incident happen where somebody did perhaps attack another or make somebody feel less than safe or anything like that? That has not
never.
happened.
It has never existed. Not in the entire time I've been doing virtual or in-person community events or women's circles or any of the other events that we put together. It's never happened.
I love to hear that. That's really encouraging. And I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit, so forgive me for doing this. But if you were to have an incident like that, if, for example, you had a circle and something went sideways and somebody did become inappropriate, have you ever thought of, and I feel like this would be great for your audience to know so that they know, you know, that there are measures in place, but have you ever thought of how you might handle that if something like that were to happen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the conversation would stop immediately. I would probably pull the person to the side and just have a conversation, maybe depending on the depth of the scenario, excuse them, right? Like there's no reason for it. There's no excuse for it. And it's not accepted. And like, once you're in that vibe, I feel like it's almost like a lot of women liken it to like a slumber party. We're sitting on the floor on mats with pillows and blankets, just like kind of talking. So I can't even imagine a world that would happen, but it's a really great question. And I think the way that I would handle it is just to kind of like put a timeout on something, ask somebody to kind of take over the conversation, and then ask the person, you know, like, can we just take this off to the side for a minute? And yeah, we would shut it down real quick.
I appreciate your answer. I really, truly do. And I appreciate you mentioning like, hey, I'm going to go have a conversation with that person, because from what we know to be true from decades of doing this and dealing with women and some men too, is that hurt people, right? So that's a trauma response, most likely. That is something inside that person that was inappropriate that needs to be healed, is my personal opinion.
Absolutely. And we do share ground rules at the beginning of each circle, is like, these are the things that we try not to say to each other. So we don't share you should statements, right? If somebody asks for some advice or guidance, then you can share your 2 cents. But for the most part, the opportunity is for you to share and to be heard, right? Sometimes there's some forget that guy, or you don't need that, type of thing. But for the most part, it's a very like welcoming, warm, and we set the stage for it at the beginning. So it's like, if somebody comes and after we kind of talk about housekeeping and the ground rules, and they're not to be like, I'm going to go ahead and check out right now, because that's definitely not what that space is for.
I love that. And I feel like that's comforting in and of itself. For example, if I were to have massive social anxiety and I were to feel fearful about sitting in your circle, and then all of a sudden I find myself sitting in your circle, it would be really comforting for me to know that there are some ground rules for how this thing's going to work, and that there is, a process if it doesn't go that route. That certainly would make me feel confident and comfortable to participate.
Yeah, and we even offer opportunities if you don't want to talk. Like, if you don't want to say anything, great. Like, there's nothing here that says that you have to share anything or talk about anything. You could just sit and listen, and maybe you'll be inspired to share the next time you come, or maybe not. Maybe it's the next time you come. There's a reason why people come. It's because they want to be heard.
Yeah. And, and this sounds so simple, but it's so impactful. One thing that I've learned through decades of, self-help, self-betterment, therapy, all of that stuff, is being seen and heard is one of the most valuable things, honestly, in my life. And once I started to feel seen and heard, which was later on in my adult life, the confidence that naturally comes from that is astounding.
And the healing, to your point. I mean, the healing that comes from being seen and heard, not to get too dark, but when you hear of like, these kids that go off and do like mass shootings and things like that. I mean, when you really look at them and the psychology of them, they're kids who hide in the shadows that, nobody really assumed anything about them because nobody assumed anything about them, right? So they really were kept in the shadows, either by their choice or by society. And, that's when negative things can happen, is when we don't feel seen and heard.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. How has this transformed you personally?
So that's a great question. I like the example that you gave of social media. My house is always clean. So one thing I think that people might assume about me is because I teach yoga, I coach, I have all these modalities, all these tools in my tool belt with breath work and yoga and meditation and Reiki, that I'm just like this just ball of light, right? That I'm always in a good mood, that I'm always relaxed, which is so much not the case. So what's been very helpful for me is obviously taking a look at myself. Because I see something in myself in every single women's circle. So every time we sit down to circle, we do like one round and everybody will share something. And what I like to ask everybody is like, did you hear something that makes sense to you or that you can relate to? It's like, yes. So the one thing that has kind of forced me to do is, every 2 weeks when we sit down for women's circle, sometimes I know what the subject's going to be. I know what the content's going to be. And I still have to ask myself, like, what am I willing to share? What am I willing to share this week? Because even though I've led, 100 women's circles at this point, I still sometimes have a challenge opening up my heart, opening up what I want to say. So every 2 weeks when I know that it's going to be coming down to it's my turn to share, and I typically kick off the circle, right? I'm going to be the one that shares first. So everybody knows that it's safe and that they feel comfortable sharing as well. So I usually have to dig pretty deep, and I usually do share something that's pretty deep, whether it's usually something that's currently going on with my life. So a lot of times the question is like, what's something that you're trying to let go of right now, right? Or what's something that you're celebrating, or what's something that you're trying to bring in. So that's when I have to dig deep and I have to share something that I'm trying to bring in or celebrate or let go of. So that's been incredibly healing for me. I think there's a huge space in healing for therapy, but I also think there's a huge space for things like women's circles, bringing in other spiritual modalities, whatever that looks like for you. Moving your body. There's all these different ways that we can find healing. And I think being able to open up and share in community has been incredibly healing for me.
I love that. So much about what you said, I have comments on, of course. I agree with you. Where I feel like traditional therapy certainly has its place, and I'm glad that it exists, there are so many other things that can offer healing and in many different ways that exist out there that I feel like people don't know enough about or don't believe in. And that's why we're here today to talk about, something that you've created that serves many women, that really and truly works. And again, I think it boils down to that being seen and heard thing. Like if I had to boil it down, it would boil straight down to that. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, there's a lot of fluff and there's a lot of other things in there, but if we had to boil it down, it's that. And I appreciate that you just shared that it's also an exercise for you to share about yourself, because I feel like that makes, it creates a comfort out there in our audience, in your audience, in my audience about sharing themselves and having that anxiety about it. Like it's a very natural thing. For example, we have another show that is comes through this podcast channel, and it's called Untying the Knot. And that is with Miranda Ray and I. And she's actually the co-admin for our other sister Mom Nation group, the Divorce Community. So if you're familiar with her. And on our podcast, we just started like a couple months ago, and we decided to share our divorce stories. So she and I both have been divorced in our past. I'm remarried to my second husband, and she has been divorced twice, actually. So we have kind of different divorce stories, and we committed to sharing them. Well, when it came to my turn, I was all like, me, like I share about what's going on in my life all the time. Like I'm, usually a pretty strong sharer, we'll say. But I told my divorce story in Darien, I couldn't release it for 2 weeks. And it wasn't even a bad story. Like I actually have a pretty decent story where, my ex-husband hates me, but outside of that, it was pretty easy. Our divorce was quick. We didn't do the attorney thing. We didn't fight about anything. We didn't have kids. We agreed right off the bat who should have what, and boom, we went along our merry ways and had other families and marriages that, really worked out better for us than ours. So it's not like it was a bad story to share. Yeah, there were some personal things that I shared about myself that, didn't make me look so great, but that wasn't necessarily what my hang up was. I just had such a hard time retelling that story to the world.
It's reopening up a lot of old wounds for sure.
Yeah.
I know Miranda well.
Oh, good.
She's led divorce group circles at the Zen Den.
Oh, cool.
We've had different members come to Women's Circle, go to her circle. So I just want to say that I'm really proud of you for opening up that door and for sharing your heart. And I'm sure when you went in, you're like, this is going to be no problem. But you definitely, you open up old wounds. And just congratulations for having the strength to do that.
Thank you. I did end up posting it. Not going to say I didn't pull some things out of it, because I did edit it a little bit. And I don't normally edit my shows, guys. Like very, very few shows do you guys see that have some sort of edit to it. It's usually set it and forget it. And, that's the way we roll. But I did edit it, and I had some nights where I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I had questioned, I was like, what am I going to tell Miranda? I can't tell Miranda that I'm too chicken to drop this. Like she just talked about both of her divorces, and now I'm too chicken to drop mine. You know what I mean? And hers had some, like there was some serious stuff in there. She had children. that were part of it. You know her story, so I'm sure you're like, yeah, she's got quite the story when it comes to her experience. I had some sleepless nights, I got to say. So I totally get it for all of you out there that are thinking to yourselves, man, I'd love to come to Darien Circle, but there ain't no way I'm talking about myself. What you just heard here is that we all feel that, at one level or another. And what you also heard is Darien say that you don't have to. So I feel like that's really comforting too.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's like I said, even if it's not the first time, and some of the realizations sometimes that we see women come to is like, wow, I have a hard time sharing. You know what I mean? And that's okay too. Like, it's all okay. It's just, I think the biggest piece is just showing up, just trying something, putting yourself out there a little bit. I'm a big fan of Mel Robbins. I'm assuming that you are too. In her Let Them book, she talks about, relationships and friendships. I'm reading another book right now called Midlife Bites by Jen Mann. She talks about the same thing. Highly recommend. It's a very good read. It's a fun read. You don't mind the occasional F-bomb. But like, the moral of all of these stories that these women are sharing is like to find your people, right? So like, at least try to find your people. If it's not a women's circle at the Zen Den, maybe it is at your church. Maybe it is, finding a Facebook group for crocheting if that's what you're into. Like, just look and find your people and put yourself out there. And what's the worst that could happen? Right. Is the question that I have to ask.
Right. I love that. And I especially love your comment about, sharing your authentic self with others. You didn't say it like that, but that's what you meant. And, or at least I think so. And I feel like that's really important, because if we don't share our authentic self, what are we going to attract back? And is that relationship actually valuable if it's attracted to our inauthentic self? Or is it more valuable if that relationship is attracted to our authentic self? Right?
100%. And then you're never truly seen or heard if you're not sharing your true authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love this talk. I think we should continue this talk. Hopefully you will come back on the show at some point down the road. Maybe when you have this, let's talk about what you got coming up, because you have some really exciting things on the calendar. I know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we may need to have a talk after one of these that you have coming up in a couple of months. So this is your time, girl. Talk about it.
Thank you. So we do have a lot of different opportunities coming up. So if you go to the ZenDenGilbert.com and go to our schedule, you'll be able to see everything, but I'll highlight a few. So this upcoming Friday, we have one called Soul Shift. I'm co-hosting it with my friend Darien. So same name, spelled differently. Isn't that great? So I'm going to be debuting my sound bowls. So I'll have, we're going to start with some sound bowls. And then we're going to get you in a comfortable position. I'm going to be giving everybody Reiki, and she's going to be providing hypnotherapy. And it's all going to be around women's self-love. So if you're looking for a shift in your energy, you're looking for, just looking deep inside for some self-love and some assistance with that, this is going to be a great opportunity. So that's this Friday at 7:00. Next Tuesday is our bi-weekly women's circle. So it's at 7:15 p.m. And you know what to expect. We just talked about it for 30 minutes of what you can expect at a women's circle. So you can book on the website. In addition to that, I'm going to be launching a group coaching mentorship program in January. So it's all going to be about mind, body, soul. So I'm finishing up a health coaching certificate to go along with all of the life coaching, emotional, spiritual coaching that I've been doing over the years. That's going to tie everything together really nicely, because we need to focus on the woman as a whole as opposed to just different pieces. So that's just a smidgen of some of the things that we have coming up at the studio. We also offer yoga classes, stretch classes, sound baths, meditation classes. We have Akashic Records coming up. So
I love that.
So yeah, I would say go to the calendar, check it out, and book. And if you want to stay in the loop on things, we also have on our homepage where you can subscribe and get our weekly newsletter that you'll be the first to know about all the events that are coming up.
Beautiful. Very, very nicely done. Thank you, Darien. That is awesome. Sounds like you got a couple of really cool topics that I'm going to have to look a little bit further into, because that certainly strikes my fancy. All right, guys, make sure that you check out the Zen Den. I have her link here in the show notes to make it real easy for you. If you want to check out any of our previous episodes, hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That is our handle. Scroll down just a tad and you will see the playlist for From the Heart. There you can binge. It's like Netflix worthy, guys. We have, I think, over 800 videos on this channel. Not all From the Heart episodes, because for those of you who don't know, I say this all the time, so my audience totally knows. But when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a radio DJ. Like I wanted to be, downtown Julie Brown on MTV, right? And so this is my way of doing that. Like I am not necessarily an MTV DJ or VJ, whatever they used to call them back then. But I'm doing the next best thing, and that's working with my ladies and, really focusing on health and wellness in this space for Mom Nation. So that's my gig. If you want to listen to it podcast style, maybe you run a lot, bike a lot, do a lot of yoga, and you prefer to put it in your earbuds, then over on your most favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. There you will find us, like, download, click the bell to notify, do us a solid and give us a review, all the things. It really helps us out. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for your time, Darien.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for all you do.
Bye.
Creepy Crawly Pest Control has one question for you. What's creeping through the cracks of your home when you're not looking? Creepy Crawly Pest Control offer customized home protection with year-round coverage. Night scorpion extractions keep your yard safe after dark. Creepy proofing seals common entry points to block pests out. And termite treatments using Sentricon help protect long-term. Pest control that's smart, targeted, and effective. Protect your peace of mind, your health, and your home all year long. Call the pros at Creepy Crawly Pest Control today.